Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome. Lovely to see so many smiling faces. Lovely to see so many seats taken at this very special evening. We'll be starting the panel discussion in around about 5 or 10 minutes for wonderful guests to speak to us tonight. But to get us underway and to get us in the mood, a short chat with the man who basically runs the whole show. More importantly, the man who pays the bills, we hope. Please welcome to the stage CEO of Conica AG, Chirag Shah. Chirag, great to see you here. Great to see this marvellous audience as well. What are you hoping that the audience will take away from this evening?
Actually, hopefully good things, that's for sure. But also really happy to see so many partners and friends of us over here. And actually the idea developed maybe approximately 2 years ago, where we said, we have access to so many good partners and experts over here, and we want to create a valuable and memorable event tonight with sharing this expertise.
4 wonderful panelists, as I mentioned. Talking of expertise, what do you think they're going to bring to our panel discussion tonight?
The experts?
Yeah.
A lot of interesting facts, I guess, and different perspectives on the athletics and tracks and field side. So I think really something very interesting for everyone.
It's been a long time in the making, as you say, 2 years of the first idea, and we've had Julio on our case every week making sure that it goes well. It's not about technical things, though. I mean, we'll get on to some technical aspects, I'm sure, but we're not going to be sitting here talking about how thick tracks are and this, that, and the other. It's a bit more general than that, wider ranging.
Actually, you know, like you said, it's not only about it's not so much into detail of technical facts. I think it's also about like the different perspectives, but also about the passion which we all share for athletics and tracks and fields. And since you're mentioning Julio, apologies if you're not, you every week. I'm just joking. No, I think wonderful event, and really think I'm really glad to be here to see everyone over here, and looking forward to the expert discussion.
To be honest, he was on the phone and the email so much my wife thought I was having an affair, but you know, good-looking lad.
He's really young and good-looking, so you know.
Yeah, there are worse choices in life, I'm sure. Once we've finished the discussion, you're very kindly providing dinner, but we can continue to network and ask questions, correct?
Please, more than welcome. This is actually one of the main, of course, targets of the event. And yes, food will be provided, drinks will be provided for sure. And I hope that everybody will also have not only very interesting facts and good insights into our area, but also to take a lot of fun tonight.
Well, let's hope so. Thank you so much for bringing us all together. Chirag Shah, everybody. Panel discussion starts in about 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Welcome along to this breathtaking venue that is Cologne Sky, and to this very special panel discussion brought to you by Conica. My name is Andy Kay, and I'll be your moderator for the next hour or so, and I'm joined by a quartet of guests that make up our panel. Starting at the far end, Christian Milts is the CEO of European Athletics. Stefan, yes, why not? Applause. Stefan Wilwacker is a professor of biomechanics at the University of Offenburg. Our third panelist is Thomas Stukas, Head of Development at Active Vilnius, dedicated to improving urban spaces for physical activity and promoting an active, vibrant city.
Thank you.
And making up this quartet, without yet dropping the baton, Kevin Young, the Barcelona Olympic champion, former world record holder at the 400-meter hurdles, and I last interviewed him, and this is true, 36 years ago. And he doesn't look a day older, does he? He's in amazing shape.
It's the last name.
And also joining us from the floor is our co-moderator, Alexandra Vizar, who's better known as Ola. Now, she'll be collecting your questions throughout the discussion and putting them on to the panel throughout the evening. Now, if you would like to submit a question, simply scan the QR code that's currently on the screen. There it is. Excellent. All the questions are anonymous, so you can be honest. Say what's really on your chest. We can probably try and translate any questions that we get that aren't in English. And if you could add with your question the panelists that you would like to answer the question, that would be great. Okay, so let's make a start. We're all here because of the way people move and the way people move on different surfaces. So we're going to start with Stefan. So perhaps you could explain to us in layman's terms, and when I say layman's terms, just imagine that I'm a very, very stupid Englishman. What exactly is the study of biomechanics?
Yeah, so biomechanics is studying how people interact with the environment. So how we move is a big part of that. Everything from walking up to world record speed sprinting. So with respect to the people who are here, we're focusing a lot of in sports. So we would analyze how people move and try to understand how they interact with the environment so that they can improve their performance. So we're not running faster, jumping higher, but also we want to understand how they can do that without getting injured too much. And that involves like acute injuries where they rupture their muscles or their bones. But it's also related to overuse injuries, which are a big problem in many sports.
So how does the technical design of a track affect athletic performance? What factors are at play here?
So basically everything that is between the human foot and the undersurface affects how we move. You can imagine, for example, that every time you run or you jump, you exert a certain amount of force through your feet to the ground. And that force, for sure, deforms a material. And then it's very interesting how much of that deformation, how much of the energy that is stored in that information is returned to the athletes, or how much is lost, how much is dissipated. Also, we know that you need a certain stiffness to generate high forces in short periods of time, like you need to do when you sprint with maximum speed, for example. So finding the optimal stiffness level is interesting, but also in many athletics events, you have to not only apply force vertically, but also in the horizontal direction. If you want to accelerate, you have to apply a lot of force in forwards directions. Or if you want to perform a very good javelin throw, you have to abruptly stop at the last step. So it's really important that athletes have enough traction and they can rely on that traction, that they are not having to fear that the surface is breaking, that they slide, because that can cause dramatic injuries sometimes.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, how quickly could you ascertain if a track was going to suit you and your style of hurdling?
A pretty, I would say, a sort of stiff track. Typically, I would just say generally, most athletes don't like soft tracks. And you get that when the weather varies, when there's very hot temperatures and there's a poor track. And like the professor was saying, how you may sink into the track. But a nice, hard, stiff track are indicators for an athlete that it's going to be a good day.
And picking up on a point I made to Stefan, I mean, as an athlete, were you aware of how the track and the facilities you were running on were affecting your performance?
Oh, yes, especially as a hurdler. That's the very first thing as a hurdler, when you do popover, especially when you drills, when you're landing, and the way your foot forms or correlates onto the track, it lets you know how much spring you're going to get back. And when I would hurdle, and I started getting better at it, I really started relying on how well constructed a particular track was. And then you really start noticing the differences when you go to different places. Says, okay. And it really starts when you just walk out on the track and in your stride and your gait, and you go, oh, this feels good. You walk around, and it kind of sets the whole moment, the tone.
Thank you. Thomas, welcome along. Great to have you here. Can you give us a little bit of background as to what exactly Active Vilnius is all about?
Okay. Active Vilnius is Vilnius municipality public institution which maintains sport facilities, stadiums and arenas and so on. So we plan, we build, we maintain, we repair all our, not our Conica surfaces mostly. Also we have more fields, of course, and football. and others. So we have also swimming pools, the whole sport infrastructure.
For sure. One of your big goals, I know, is to provide facilities where they don't exist already. So what kind of influence would you have on the building of a new facility?
I can say simply, we look for places where we have not a lot of infrastructure for sports, and people show where they need this infrastructure. You can see that just no grass, just plain fields, plain earth, and then you're finding a new place where you could make a new facilities for sports.
Cool. Christian, great to have you here. Another one of my bosses, who, by the way, also pays the bills, thank goodness. I know you normally work with national governing bodies or local organising committees, but I'm wondering what kind of assistance an organisation like European Athletics could give to the potential owner of a new facility. What could you do for them?
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I think it's important that we are made aware of there is a new project, a new track to be built or to be renovated, and very often it's the case. Our national members, some club members, are informing us about new projects, and the project planning is very, very important. The technical requirements must be respected, but it always depends on which dimension of events you want to organize in the future. It's not the same if you have the objective to organize a European outdoor championships or just maybe national clubs competitions. And when we know that, we can provide recommendations, and at the end, of course, World Athletics will certify the track. But it's very important that up front the project is well prepared and well thought.
One of the things you do as a governing body, of course, is look at cities that tender to host major championships. Just how important is the quality of the track and the facility as a whole when you're looking at those bids?
We have a big manual of different requirements for different events. Of course, each event is different. However, one of the crucial criteria when evaluating a bid is the quality of the track. What we want always to offer is the best conditions for the athletes, not only transportation, hotels, but before all, the quality of the track.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Stefan, I'm wondering also about how a facility, how a track can be of equal benefit to an elite athlete and, say, somebody like myself who would lumber around 200 meters very, very slowly. Can it be of equal benefit? Can we all as individuals get the same out of it?
I think yes and no at the same time. Since we are all humans, so we share common traits, and our locomotor system has a similar structure, so we can try to build a track that is in general working well with that. But for sure, you are maybe not anymore having the physique of like a current world record holder. Or
you
somebody
spotted
else.
that, yes.
Yeah, it was difficult to do, but with my trained eye, I could see that. So there is variability in humans. So that's why there's also variability in how we interact with the tracks. And you could also even argue that there are certain athletes who have a better feeling, like Kevin said, they can adapt quicker to a certain track, and others maybe not. So there is differences, but as a track supplier, you probably want to have a system that is benefiting in general to everyone, and then you cannot get rid of that you have certain athletes who might have be working a bit better with a certain track or not.
Thomas, probably, I'm guessing a little bit, but probably the facilities that you provide are more for the general public.
Yes.
It must give you a huge sense of satisfaction to increase participation with the facilities you upgrade or the facilities that you put in from new.
Yes, of course. If you have place which is abandoned for a lot of years, and you are making new with a lot of colors, big quality thing. It is kind of thing.
And Christian, participation for you must be hugely important. So when you see these new tracks going in, these new facilities going in, it must do your heart good, yeah?
Well, of course, I mean, also one of our requirements in our bidding process is really legacy. We really want to know about the legacy of the track owner, the city, or the government. And here, of course, it starts with not only one big event, but how you are going to use the track every day, every week, because the investment is made by taxpayers, and you need to be coherent and to make sure that this investment is relevant. And it's relevant only if the track is then in the future used by the whole population, club members, youngsters, and any citizen who has the possibility to use. Anyway, there is also something probably for track suppliers, whether you want the highest quality for speed or the highest quality to sustain for 5, 10 years. And probably it's also a dilemma to choose what you want to do, but it's more the track owner to decide what's the long-term objective with the investment in a new or a renovation of a track.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, when you were training, you were obviously training in your specialist group, but there were occasions, and certainly on some of the Diamond League meetings now, the tracks are public, so you have a very special site of elite athletes training next to general members of the public. How did you deal with that as an athlete? Because whilst wanting your track time to be as good as possible, participation, as we're saying to Christian, is absolutely crucial for the sport of athletics to survive.
Mm-hmm. Well, in my case, I was a walk-on at UCLA, meaning that I wasn't a scholarship athlete. And this was right after the '84 Olympics in Los Angeles. And, you know, one of the things being keying in on the Olympic trials in the U.S., and then weeks later, the actual Olympic Games were being there. When the games were all over and I saw all my track and field superstars on television, Carl Lewis, you know, Alice Brown, Florence Griffin Joyner, you know, Al Joyner, Jackie Joyner, you know, all the Joyners. When I went to UCLA in that fall, a lot of those same athletes that I just saw on television were out there training on the track. And it blew me away. And as a youngster, and like I said, in high school, I ran on a dirt track. So even running on an all-weather track was something brand new to me. And I totally had to adjust to being able to run on that particular type of surface. And once I got there, I just saw the way in which they were training, and it was like, I felt personally, it was like a little bit of osmosis that just, you know, and I'm sure a lot of young athletes, when they're around elite athletes, they get that feeling. You start looking at them differently. You see how they walk, how they interact, how they actually work out, and the relationship in which they do have with their coaches. And it all goes into play on your future to where you want to be. And a lot of I would say the challenges that I actually faced, but I overcame, was by watching those athletes, you know. And I was like, wow, so this is how you become an elite athlete. And curious enough, within 2 years of participating, you know, from high school, within 2 years, I was a member of the Santa Monica Track Club, with my teammate being one of the greatest athletes in the world, Carl Lewis. And it took me a number of years being out in that club to stop being a fan of him, and becoming his teammate. So I literally went from, you know, a young kid who was just running on a dirt track to now I'm running on you know, an all-weather surface with some of the best athletes in the world, you know, the icons of track and field to this day.
Absolutely. And just to round off this little section before we go to questions from Ola, I'm really intrigued to know if you could explain to us the difference between running on a dirt track and then perhaps, you know, the track you sped round in Barcelona. What are the key differences that we would understand?
Traction. First and foremost, especially, I mean, it seems obviously when you went on a dirt track, we're on a dirt track with spikes. It helped, but it really didn't really, you know, you don't really notice it until you get on the all-weather surface. And once you get on the all-weather surface, your whole walk changes, your whole movement changes, like the professor was saying, and then you're actually able to, you know, put in and take out the energy of the track. But when you're on a dirt track, you don't notice all that. You're typically trying not to step in potholes and rocks and all that sort of thing, and glass. When you're on an all-surface track, it just really illuminates your feeling and lets you know, yeah, this is where I need to be. I mean, that's the feeling in which I had. I've always wanted to be an Olympian, and so that was my particular goal. And when I accomplished that, literally 4 years after finishing high school, that was the biggest moment of my life. And then, obviously, 4 years later was another great moment.
Absolutely. Well, I think they broke the 4-minute mile, didn't they, on the cinder track? I wonder how fast Roger Bannister would have gone if he was on an all-weather track. That's a question possibly for another day. Ola, have we had some questions in from our audience? And who would they like to put those questions to?
We actually have a lot of questions from the audience, so I'm
Crack
really
on.
happy about it. Because it shows how are we all engaged in this matter. So it's really important. Thank you for that. The first one goes to Stefan. At the beginning of the panel discussion, you introduced us to some matters connected to biomechanics. And a topic that is always fiercely debated is force reduction. So there seems to be several viewpoints of this. What is the correct perspective?
I don't know if I can give you the correct perspective, but as a biomechanist, I always have the feeling that the tests that are used in the certification of the tracks, they are too mechanics. So they sometimes lack the biomechanic. And if you look at the force reduction test, that is basically, for those who might not know, I assume mostly know, a weight that is being dropped on the surface. And then you compare how much peak force you have on the track compared to a plain concrete surface. So that is kind of important because it says us something about the energy that is absorbed, that is important for if you fall and when the energy gets absorbed, so you don't want to get dramatic injuries, let's say, to your upper extremities and everything. And it has also some idea that it is relevant with respect to overuse injuries. But we must say that this is only representing one kind of force application and is only very vertical. So for many respects that are different for performance and injury prevention, this is a too narrow window on if you want to understand injury risk and performance. So I would always argue for widening the tests, also include other force components and simulate more of the very different patterns that we actually see in track and field in all the different events. That is actually the beauty of the sport, that it is so diverse. But it's also making testing very difficult and also developing tracks very kind of like an art, you could say.
Thank you, Stefan. Now we have two interesting questions to Kevin. The first one is, for high altitude training at 11,000 square feet, is it beneficial or harmful for an athlete?
If you're an athlete and you grew up in that type of altitude, you're fine. But the person who grows or trains at sea level, obviously it'll tear you up, your lungs. You won't be able to react, or your lungs won't be able to take in the oxygen. So it would definitely vary, and we see that all the time when runners go to different places. I remember going to Colorado Springs for the first time and running a relay. And just ran a simple leg on a relay, but it took me 3 hours to recover. And my teammate literally had to take an IV and sit in training for him to recuperate. So it varies, but other than that, I would prefer to train at sea level.
Another question, I guess it is to Kevin. Does every athlete like the same track?
Say it again. Love the same track?
Does every athlete like the same track?
No. I learned recently. I was in Trento at a sports festival with Mike Powell, world record holder in long jump, and we were discussing today's long jumpers as opposed to when he was jumping with Carl and those guys. And he was telling me, as a jump coach, how the jumpers nowadays, they don't know how to literally react to the track. And like the professor was saying, you have your vertical force and your horizontal force. And Mike was telling me that the jumpers nowadays, they do not know how to utilize their vertical force. Their horizontal force. And if you remember in the past, most of the world greatest, top long jumpers were all 100-meter sprinters. So they relied a lot upon the speed in which they gathered along the runway and that horizontal force that they went toward the board. And he told me, and just listening to him, he was saying a lot of them, they haven't figured that out. That's the reason why a lot of them aren't jumping over 8.5 meters. Because you go back 30 years, even if you look at the Olympic standards, probably in the past, the long jump standard is probably maybe lower than it was now than it had been, in the 80s. So those are little curious things that I see now, and hopefully other coaches can help and explain that to their athletes, that how important it is to apply certain forces depending on where you are. Obviously, the force that you do in the javelin is going to be different than what you're doing in the hurdles.
Thank you, Kevin. We also have a question to Christian, which is basically a continuation of an Andy question. Is the relationship with European athletics always through the national governing body, or can it be through a private individual or group?
Well, I think it's very clear. We always go via a member federation, and then it escalates to the world level, where it's the certification which is given. But in our whole bidding processes for the different events we have about 25 different nature of events. It always go via a member federation, but we try to create a team. It's not only the member federation, it's also the host city, sometimes the province or the government.
Thank you. And now a question to Thomas. Does the public sport facilities from Active Vilnius have the potential to upgrade neighborhoods that weren't the nicest ones before? Let's say they add more quality to the neighborhood. Is there already some feedback or evidence about it?
Yes, definitely. Evidence? I don't know. Evidence, they are. For example, if earlier you saw some kids were playing in the yard, but most of them were played by their phones or tablets. And when we renovate this sport facility, whatever it would be, you won't see the kids with telephones. And it makes sense what you do. It may be a football square, it may be running track, basketball or tennis. It doesn't matter. It matters colors and maybe a ball, I don't know. Just a mind of.
Thank you. And last but not least, Andy, I'll pass it on to you. The panel has talked about a stiff versus soft track and energy restitution. Does the panel think that energy restitution should be measured as a part of the World Athletics certification process?
Wow, that's a good one. I'm going to pass that over to the professor because he's much cleverer than I am.
Maybe in one or two fields, maybe not in others. It is a very good question. I think it is not super easy to reliably measure that, so that is important. If you want to enforce it, you also have to have measurements that can do that, and I think that these should be developed and evaluated at the same time. But I think it could be good because then at least on for a certain criterion competition, like if you talk about the highest levels, then you could create circumstances which are more similar, and then the athletes could prepare better for that, and then it is more the athletes that are in the focus, which we in the end all want. And if you know what track to expect, maybe if you have a track in your member federation or one or two of them, then you can train with that, and then it becomes a goal to adjust your training to work best with this type of track. So I would say yes, but we have to make sure that we find the right level and that we can test them reliably.
Thank you. That's all from my side for now.
Thank you very much indeed, Ola. More questions available from Ola in the next 15 minutes or so, so don't forget, please scan the code and put your questions in. Can we concentrate for a little bit now, gentlemen, on indoor tracks? And Stefan, I'm fascinated by how different track surfaces or even different gradients on the curve can have such an effect on performance. Can you give us some explanation as to why that is?
Yeah, because what is the tricky part about running it around the curve? You have to create a force, this time not only vertical and in the front like we talk, you have to create a force to the side which allows you to run on the curve. And indoors there's not so much space as outdoors, so we have to bend the curves with a smaller or a radius, with a harder curvature. So in order to then still be able to create these forces, you bank the turns so that you can basically apply the forces normal, so like vertical to the banked surface, and that makes it easier for you. And that is very important. We see that if we compare, so basically I think most of you who are in athletics know that if you run indoors on lane 1 compared to somebody running on lane 3 or 4, you don't have any chance. And that is mostly because even if you have these bank curves, the forces that you have to generate inwards are much higher. So that's why that is really important, and that's why it's actually really good if you have 6 indoor lanes, because then you have like a more level playing field to do that.
And hence the reason probably that the 200 meters doesn't appear at championships anymore, because as you say, if you're in lanes 1 to probably 3 or 4, you don't have much of a chance. So the gradient's important. We know the track surface is important because of, as well as affecting performance, we need to ensure that any facility, any track can prevent injury. How does the design of a track do exactly that? How do we prevent injury via track design?
Yeah, so there's also a good question. So we know also know that from my own experience that if you run, even though we like stiff tracks, even though I find it interesting that recently figured out that you find stiff and springy tracks quite good, so it has to have a certain elasticity, the track. But I think all of we know if you go to a track that is really worn down, becoming super hard and aged over the years, and then you have to do a hard training camp on that, it's probably not something that you like, because we are not always in the conditions that we are when we go to a competition. Normally we are rested, we prepare for that competition, so our musculoskeletal system is in an ideal condition to interact with that maybe challenging environment. But if you are in a training situation, we are sometimes very tired, we still want to do high training volumes, and in that situation, a surface that has a certain amount of energy absorption, a bit more softness, can be beneficial. And also safe tracks also means that they are working well in any condition. That is also meaning that if it's wet, if it's hot, if it's cold, if it has been used or not, maybe if there is like some dirt coming up, that it's still working at least in a certain range. So that is, I think, the key requirements, or these are the key requirements for injury protection.
Thank you very much. Safety is, of course, paramount. Kevin, I'm wondering if you ever felt unsafe on a track, and even if not, what concerns do, obviously yes, what concerns do athletes have about safety and injury prevention?
Well, obviously, as a hurdler, I've fallen a number of times, and I've fallen on tracks that were very old and very hard, and not even just the fact that the injury that you may even suffer from making contact with your foot. But it's important if it's a fairly soft track and you're falling, you have a tendency in your mind to kind of know how to break the fall. But when the track is obviously really hard, it doesn't even matter. It's going to be very painful. You know, and obviously the recovery from getting any sort of injury on the track is something that an athlete doesn't want to really go through, you know, or deal with. But yes, it happens all the time.
For sure.
And you become very mindful when you walk up on these track surfaces. And I like when you mentioned, or the professor mentioned, if it's wet, if it's dusty, even if it's created, and maybe the finish that's been put on the surface is, you know, either too slippery, you know, or it hasn't been worn through, I guess, by the populace yet. Those are a lot of things that are abruptly in your face, and you face as an athlete when you jump on these surfaces.
Thomas, you're building facilities mainly, as we said earlier, for members of the general public. So I imagine safety is very high on your list of priorities, and probably on occasion has meant a change of design.
Sorry, not correctly understood.
How important is safety when you and Active Illness are putting together a new facility?
I think it's the most important thing. And to reach this safety, we must discuss with kind of professors, kind of sportsmen, and whole public. No one can know everything. That's why we need to discuss, to consultate, to look for it's done, and one of my priorities is to know from sportsmen not what to do, but not what not to do.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, thank you very much, Christian. Athletes can be quite chatty people, some aside. And you know they're not averse to making the odd complaint or suggestion. As the CEO of European Athletics, have you had many emails or letters across your desk from athletes saying, "I'm not sure about this facility," or "What about doing this to this track?" Do you get that kind of traffic from elite athletes?
Well, not really. More about the food. And about the quality of transport, but almost never about the track. What we do is that after each event, we request reports from all our different officials, and of course we have sometimes feedback about the field of play, about the track quality, but very, very few. We also have the World Athletics annual report, where we also can go through that and see some feedback, but not really so many. But you were talking about indoor tracks, but I'm not sure if people know that there is a big World Athletics decision that indoor will, in a way, disappear and will be replaced by short track in order to offer athletes similar or same conditions to compete during the whole year. And I think it will also offer new opportunities also for track producer, track supplier, for new tracks with maybe a smaller budget, because it will be a 200-meter track.
You must be a mind reader, because that was exactly going to be my next question. So well done on that one. As an individual and mixing in elite athletics circles, what's been the reaction to that decision from World Athletics? And just in case you missed what Christian was saying, the idea is you can now build a 200-meter track outdoors, but still effectively host an indoor event, so to speak.
Well, again, I think still in the north part of Europe, we still have indoor arena, which will be renamed short track. Mm-hmm. We will have to change also our indoor championships, because it's strange to have an indoor championships outdoor. Doesn't make sense, but we may have in the future in the south of Spain or in Portugal some European indoor championships, but on the outdoor track. And again, the budget for the track owners is also lower. And then the challenge we face with indoor facilities is that it's difficult for the supporting facilities to have a space enough, warm-up, training venues, all the different facilities we need. It will be much easier if it is in a way outdoor.
Yeah, I mean, opportunity is key here, isn't it? And it does give the opportunity to nations who potentially wouldn't have the budget to host that kind of event, gives them the opportunity to do just that. Kevin, what are your thoughts on this short track initiative from World Athletics? I mean, from my perspective, 200 meter less to run, great idea.
Yes. I think it's amazing. I think it's a great idea, and kind of piggyback on to the talk about indoor. I never was big on indoor racing growing up on the West Coast. We didn't have to deal too much. Well, in Southern California, we didn't have to deal too much with the inclement weather, like in the East. However, I think for them to have to create, and one of the things is my mentality was always, and sorry for saying this, I didn't think track meets were any important indoors because my goal was always, when are they ever going to have the Olympic Games indoors? But now, with some of these facilities that they have with the rooftops and all, it's almost practically an indoor facility.
Do you honestly think that indoors is becoming more important to more athletes? I mean, there are those who are steadfastly against it. They'll never run indoors, whether that's because they don't like the bank, whether they don't like the tracks, whether they're scared of getting injury. But certainly from my perspective, looking at some of the events I've been to, it seems to be getting a bit more kudos.
Definitely. Especially for field event athletes. But as far as running, I think a lot of athletes are learning how, more or less, I would say, quote unquote, cross-train, being able to run effectively both indoor as well as obviously outdoor. I think it's a good way to keep the sport popular. Because who really wants to not have an opportunity to run when the weather's bad? And even if the weather is bad, if you have an opportunity to run on a short track, get the workout in and out and get off the track as soon as possible. But yes.
And probably a very, very silly question, but I have seen a YouTube video. Ever done any hurdles indoors?
No. I think I saw either Felix Sanchez race indoors
that
a few
is
times.
Correct, yeah.
And I remember, I think he has the world indoor record running the 400 hurdles. And when someone first told me that there was a 400-meter hurdle race indoor, I think it was in Spain or somewhere years ago, I thought they were lying. I literally cursed them out, like, get out of here, and said, a few, fabricated words. But then I saw the race, and it blew my mind. Had I known they would have had hurdles indoors, I probably would have tried to do that. Because, as a hurdler, you want to do things that are challenging. But, oh, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, and of course the reason Sanchez has got the world record because he's the only man mad enough to have done the race. And
we got another mad 400-meter hurdler out there just breaking records and doing all type of things.
Indeed, we do. He doesn't seem to care what track he's on.
Doesn't matter.
Can I ask a question? Were there hurdles in the bank curves?
I think they were on the first two lanes. Okay. But yeah, they were on the bank.
Because that is impressive, because running, you have to be really fast to run across you cannot really, if you run slow, it's feeling really odd, so basically you have to be fast to lean in, so you get compressed to the curve and then getting up again to the hurdle.
Can you imagine being a right leg lead?
Yeah. It would be really interesting to study biomechanically what's going on with your legs there.
Biomechanically and in there as well, I think. Okay, I think we've got time for some more questions from Ola.
So first of all, once again, thank you so much for so many questions. I'm trying to get them all. Christian, a question to you. How influential is a continental federation like European Athletics in order to bring up new testing requirements on the table?
We are always open to new things, new competitions. And for example, we developed already in the last 5 years these dynamic new athletics competitions where we could test different things, and we like to be a kind of test lab for world athletics and for other federations, probably to inspire new things. But we still see with the DNA that it's more about innovation within tradition than totally new things. It means we are more focusing on what we can do with technical new or technology new elements in order to be innovative, but not to change totally the tradition of the sport.
Thank you. And one more. What's the most important property, what you look for when specifying the track system?
Which property?
Is anyone from the floor that asked this question?
I'm not sure. I
guess the question is, what is the most important property of a track so that you would say, hey, this is valid for the next European Championship?
Everything is important.
That's a tough question.
Maybe can I ask a question here? So I think in order to make the sport more attractive, I think it is important to make it more attractive to the TV crowd. And I've seen certain things in the last World Championships, at least in the German television, where they integrated some kind of basic biomechanical analysis. And I could imagine that you could integrate sensors in tracks that then could get the TV crowd additional information which would be interesting to make the sport more interesting. Is that something where you're thinking about?
That's technical flooring is something, of course, we are dreaming of. Not sure when it will come, and we need also to speak with track producers. But there is a lot of things that we can provide, and data is king, as you know, and that's why biomechanical input and data are very important and very useful to make our sport more attractive in the future.
Yeah, just to interject there, I mean, certainly for the TV coverage for the World Athletics Championships in Budapest, for instance, they were adding little bits of data that we hadn't seen before. The speed of release of the javelin, and the speed of the turn of the hammer throwers. Also, not biomechanical, but the clearance or how high pole vaulters were going over the bar. So I think it's definitely coming, and some of it may already be here.
There's a school in San Fernando Valley, I believe Birmingham High School in California, that they have a smart track, I was told. And it was because one of the questions were measuring stride length of sprinters. And if you have, obviously sensors in the track, you can see touchdown times and takeoff, touchdown lengths and takeoff lengths on the track. But I believe the track at Birmingham High School, it's a smart track. I don't know what type of technology they've used. I haven't been on the track, but word of mouth is, and I'm wondering who actually installed it.
We're actually going to talk about the future when Ola's finished this latest round of questions. We'll come back to that.
Thank you all. We're hungry for knowledge, so I'll turn to the professor now. What happened to an athlete if the track surface is too soft or too hard?
As being a professor in Offenburg, I can give you a very practical example, which maybe some of you might remember. So Offenburg, probably nobody knows about the city because it's very small, even within Germany. I struggle sometimes to explain people. But there is a very famous athlete in the javelin throw, Johannes Vetter. So he was injured this year, but the 2 years before he was among the world leading athlete. And he went to the Olympics. And he has a very extreme technique. So he is performing the last step in an extreme fashion. So he's probably the human on Earth that can create the largest horizontal forces in the shortest period of time. And for him, the track that were used in the last Olympics were not sufficient to hold these forces. So basically the surface was breaking and he would slide. So he was pretty lucky that he only got a mild injury. And in that case, the track was not allowing every athlete to perform at their best level. And I think that is where track suppliers need to come into play and give a level playing field for that. Because I think one basic requirement is that every athlete should be able to perform the sport that he physically can and how he can train. So I think that is important, and it also raises the question, in my opinion, if we need or if it is necessary that the track has the same properties everywhere in the stadium, because there are areas in javelin, in high jumping, triple jumping, where higher demands are given to the tracks.
Okay.
Yeah, regarding Olympics, there's also a great example of a Belgian decathlete in the long jump. That's a similar case. So let me ask another question from the audience. Is there really something called a fast track?
Is there a fast track?
I would say so. Because we've recently done an analysis of the world best performances in track and field over the last 12 years, starting in 2010 up to 2022. And there is a clear effect over the last years in particular. And I would not say that this is all due to the tracks. There's also, between foot and subsurface, there's also shoes. But I think that overall, we can over time see that there is an effect of improved surfaces, and that relies mostly to optimizing the stiffness yet. But I think there's more potential in it. In particular, if we would allow tuning the tracks to certain, in certain parts of the track, that it would not be always the same.
Thank you. We're running out of time, so I will ask just one more question, and I will actually pass it on to you, Andy, because I don't know who to ask, to be honest. What will be the biggest innovation in the area of tracks?
That is a perfect question, and I'll appreciate a little bit, if I may, because this is exactly the subject I wanted to go on. So, Ola, thank you for the moment. And whoever asked that question, like Christian, you're a mind reader. So let's have a look at the future, so to speak. Stefan, we'll start with you, because you've done some work on super spikes. And we don't want to go down the spikes conversation tonight. That's for another evening, and we could be here for hours. But super spikes or super tracks. Kevin mentioned smart track in the States. How far away are we from what you would call super tracks, which will just aid performance to another level?
I think we're already quite well there. Also, because sometimes the target is not to just optimize performance. If you have a good track, you want to make it more sustainable over the last years. I think it is not good anymore that we build a track and then rip it off after 2 weeks of competition. So given that there are overall requirements, I would say we're already pretty good. But I think if we really understand how humans interact with the elastic properties of surfaces, and also materials become better and more interesting there, that's why shoes have developed so far. It's just mostly because the materials allow it now. So if we really understand how to integrate these novel materials, then I think there is still quite a substantial room for improvement.
And if World Athletics or European Athletics, if Christian wakes up one morning and he decides he's going to change the rules, and you could have one type of surface for the track, one for the javelin runway, another for the high jump approach, would that have a dramatic effect on performance, in your opinion?
I think so. It would have an effect on performance, but it would also make the sport a bit more safe, to be honest, because we see also we could probably play around also with stuff that is working better with rain in high jump, for example. They put on lots of efforts to do that. So I think it would be definitely performance, because if athletes feel safe, then they apply greater forces. That is how our neurological system works. But clearly, I think we could get rid of these extreme and unpleasant views that we have sometimes with the injuries.
Okay, thank you. Christian, as I say, you've woken up. You're going to break all the rules next week. It's the future. What innovations do you think you could foresee happening that might become reality, that might become into fruition?
Could see happening, or just a dream?
Well, let's go for both.
Okay.
Let's go for both.
What we could see happening sooner, hopefully, is field of play without officials, totally clean. Maybe one official per event, and that's it. Thanks to the technology. Then probably retractable material that you also have as a spectator a totally clean view. You know, things would come and then be removed as the poles, as cages, maybe cages also kind of transparent cages, something that we can play around. My dream would be to have a 300-meter track. A lot of advantages. First of all, you can suit the track within the latest soccer stadiums with the whole technology, all the best services. In addition, of course, we would stop with the current world records, and you would be happy, Kevin. It's broken.
Seb tried to do that in 2005.
And then we would remove this monkey that we have on our back for a really long time. It's about doping. You start from scratch, you create new world record about this 300-meter track, and I'm sure it would be also very helpful for Conica and track providers, because you can create something new and it will be new business for you.
That's a very good answer. Very good answer. I must delve into your dreams more often. Thomas,
they paid the travel for me.
Thomas, do you get people coming up to you knowing that you're going to build these great new facilities, saying to you, have you ever thought about this great new idea? Have you considered something completely different?
Yes, I was thinking about smart surfaces. I believe in them. I believe that we will have such a surfaces. Maybe Conica can see more, I don't know, but I believe that we will have such a surfaces which can maybe even heal itself, if it will have some minor injuries. And maybe sometime we will have such surfaces which could change its pressure.
The properties, yeah.
Yes, the properties. Maybe it can see if a sportsman is falling and make itself soft. I believe in that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Last question. We're talking about the future, but Kevin, I'm going to sort of take you back to the past, okay? It's 1992. You are in the form of your life, and magically, Julio and Chirag turn up on your doorstep from Conica in the present day, and they go, here you go, here's one of our brand new current tracks from 2023. You're that young go-getter who's just about to run 46.78. If those two guys turned up with a track from today in 92, how fast would you run?
Probably 45, 90, 94.
Could you I was going to say, don't sit on the fence. Give us an exact number. But
no, I chose that number because I'm very impressed with what Carson did with the hurdle race. I thought the record would have been broken decades ago by the quality of athletes, and it took almost 3 decades for someone like Carson to come around and to do what he did. And I always say that a lot of even when he broke my record and ran as fast as he did, a lot of folks were asking me how critical I was going to be about his time. I'm like, the athlete is always the athlete, regardless of the surface. He went out there and ran, the 46.70 in Oslo. He went out there and ran that time, that day. And you can't take nothing from it. And I always tell folks that that's his record. 46.78 is my record. 47.02 is Edwin's record, So I know Edwin's proud of what he did. I'm definitely proud because you look at the layer. Regardless of my record getting broken, I broke the legend's record.
Sure.
So we can talk about myself and Carson, but when people I think about the hurdles, they talk about Edwin.
Excellent.
But now I get excited because I'm a part of the whole history of the event now. At first, I was just a young kid chasing records, but the fact that I was able to set a standard that someone who wasn't even born can say, okay, that's what the level is. Just as Edwin did in his race. When he ran, I was like, wow, how am I going to run as fast as that guy did? And lucky enough, I was able to do it. But when it comes to these track surfaces, my whole attitude of racing would have been a lot more forceful, I guess you would say. I was very apprehensive when I ran my record, not knowing that I could have got a lot more out of the track if I would have put more into it. And watching these athletes today, they're actually putting more into the track, their whole attitude. My attitude was a little apprehensive because I was just in shock. But these guys are going out there knowing that they're running on great surfaces. They got great equipment and great training and great information that feedback they've been able to get over the years.
Cool. Thank you very much indeed. And I guarantee after 3 or 4 glasses of wine at dinner, that time will be down to about 44.3, won't it?
No, it'll be it will
absolutely.
It would be.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that just about wraps up the discussion. I do hope you've enjoyed listening to our 4 guests. Please would you show your appreciation for Christian Mills, Stefan Wilvacker, Thomas Stukas and Kevin Young.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thanks to Ola for moderating for the audience questions, to Conica and Chirag for hosting us, and as mentioned, Julio for his extraordinary work in putting this in. Well done to the both of you. Thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
And my last thanks is to you for coming and joining us in the rain here. I hope the wet weather didn't spoil your enjoyment. It's a stunning venue. We're about to get given a stunning dinner. You can carry on networking and ask these guys any questions that you want. You can even talk to Christian about your dreams if you so desire. Enjoy the rest of your evening from myself and Ola. Enjoy it and see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.